had to choose a location where they wanted to go to. I'm telling you stuff that I think they will confirm, only because I have been in conversation with them and also had the opportunity to go and visit where they're at. They decided to go to Haiti because they wanted to be somewhere completely off the map. They wanted to see what it was like to live somewhere away from the U.S., from all of the comfortable living that they have here in Southern California, and to really do service work. And they're at an orphanage where they have something around like 20 kids that are there in the orphanage. And it's run by a community of people that actually began to have this idea through conversations that they were having at church. They wanted to do something for all the kids that were homeless. Every time they would go to church and stuff, they would see these kids that had no parents. Some of them have really impressionable stories of losing their parents in the big earthquake, for example. And then they would have to beg for food and stuff. So anyway, the church people started to talk about, well, what can we do? What can we do to help these kids and to house them? And they built this project called Project 7 Children's Village, and it's an orphanage where they have brought in these kids, and they send them to private school, they pay for their tuition, they get them clothes, they do worship with the kids every night, and it's really cute. While I was there, you saw them like lead out in worship completely, and they just care for them and meet their needs. There's some of the kids that have been there for years and years, and they're now in their teenage years and getting ready to find jobs, different trades that they can do. One of the things that happened while we were there is that, actually just before we were there, I'm telling this wrong, like about 2 or 3 weeks before we were there, the orphanage got in 5 new kids. It was 5 little boys that had been rescued from a child trafficking incident that had occurred. I'm hoping that the sound comes on because they probably have more details than I do, and I hope that I am telling this. Is it working? Yes? No? Okay, we'll keep going. So these 5 boys that were rescued, they had actually, they were almost ready at the border of Santo Domingo, where they were going to get exchanged and then probably sent out across the globe to do different jobs. But it was, what surprised me was that it was an Adventist pastor who had the trust of those kids' parents. Those kids' parents then made some sort of deal with the pastor where the pastor got a portion of money for these kids. The parents did also. And then these kids, there were several of them with him that he was going to take over to the border of the Dominican Republic, and then he was going to get his cut of cash. The thing that was really something that hit me hard was that these 5 little boys were the sweetest thing in the world. And you could see that they were still trying to adjust to the fact that they were not going home with their parents. If you can think about what it was like, I think the youngest one was like 5 years old. Was that right, Pastor Dante? He was around 5 or 6. I think that was the youngest one, and the oldest one was 14. If you can imagine when you were 5 years old, the people you trusted the most were your parents. And if you grew up in the church, the pastor was someone who was probably a trusted adult in the eyes of a little kid. And here there was money being exchanged, and there was trust being violated, and these little boys, when they got rescued, to them their whole world changed, because even though they got saved, they could not return to be with their parents. They had to come to the orphanage. And some of them would even say, we're gonna go back home. We're gonna go back home. My parents are gonna come and get me. Okay. You're calling your mom. Hey, yeah, now say something really profound that we got audio. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can! I know. Send extra money to Verizon, now it works. Okay, so a couple questions. I was trying to tell them about the 5 kids that you guys received that were being rescued from being trafficked, but maybe you can give the story with some details.
Sure. Okay. So we have 5 new boys, and they came in September, late September. They are ages 5, 6, 9, 7, 9, and 14. Two, two of those kids are brothers, and there's another pair of brothers, and there is a cousin. But they were all actually trafficked by a quote-unquote Adventist pastor, which is actually pretty common here in Haiti for pastors to traffic children. So they were actually caught at the Dominican Republic border trying to cross illegally with the pastor along with 13 other children. Fortunately, those 5 boys were lagging behind, and they were able to catch them. But the sad part is that oldest sister of those boys, she is 15, actually ended up getting away with the pastor, and we still don't know where she is. So boys have been through a lot, but they're pretty strong.
How are they doing?
They're actually doing pretty well. The surprising thing that we found when they first got here was how much the kids that were already here, the people that were here already, accepted them. We didn't know what was going on. We just, when we first came in and we saw the boys here, because we were actually outside of the orphanage. We were in the Dominican, working with the director there. And when we came, that they were just one of the neighbor kids, with our kids, because they were all along playing. And then later we ended up finding out what actually happened and that they were actually dropped off here. And it was just amazing for us to see how well they were a part of the family here. And I think that's just because of the people that are already living here at the I remember the first day, one of the older boys saw one of the little kids sleeping during worship, and he just carried him like his own little brother and took him to bed. They only knew each other for a day, They're all coping in their own way from the experience they had at the border, because we heard there was guns also involved. They were shooting. So some of the little kids are coping in different ways. They're doing fine. They're good.
I was telling them while we were trying to fix the sound a little bit about Project 7 Children's Village. Can you sum up what it is that Project 7 Children's Village is all about, and why you chose that mission site out of all the possibilities that you had to be a student missionary? Why did you choose going there?
Yeah.
Okay, so Project 7 pretty much started by 7 church groups. They saw the need. They saw kids all over the street. It's pretty common here to see kids as slave or residential, or kids who just aren't going to school because they don't have money. So we saw a lot of these kids and decided to pick them up and make it an orphanage. At first, it was a tiny little house, and they just started picking up kids, and would sleep on the floor. One person out of those 7 each day, they would rotate, and they would pay for all the meals for the kids. And after that, they started getting word out, and they started getting sponsors. Thankfully, now we live in a pretty big house for all these kids. So that's where Project 7 came from. How I chose to come here, well, I don't think I can say that I really chose. I was actually looking into a different mission site in Brazil, but I wasn't really sure what to choose. I remember Daniel called me and told me about this opportunity, and I was kind of iffy about it because I
You use the word rest of it. Can you explain what that is to all of us here?
Okay, so rest of that here is slave children. It is the common word that they use here for.
Now, the fact that they have a common word for slave children says something about the condition of human trafficking in Haiti. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've learned about human trafficking while you've been there?
Yeah, so the way things work in Haiti, human trafficking is actually quite common. Child trafficking is very common. What usually happens, the process usually is pastors or whoever usually find the kid and then in Haiti, and then from Haiti cross them over to the Dominican, and from the Dominican they use that as a port of shipment for these kids, for these children all around the world. So yeah, that's how it works ultimately. Luckily, the five that were caught were caught early.
Well, thanks, Jessica and Daniel. We're praying for you, and we know that God is using you, and so glad that you could share some of what you're doing over there. God bless you.
Hi guys. So I believe that God called and brought us here today to learn about human trafficking and the reality of it. And I also believe that He called us here to fellowship with each other. So if I can have everybody scoot in closer to an empty chair, just come closer, please, to worship with us right now. Anybody can get on their feet, please. So we're going to worship right now. This next song we're going to sing is called Shepherd. In your presence.
Will lift my head. It is well. I'm Thai. I'm married with no kids.
I'm an American mother, a single mother of 2 daughters, and I'm the sole financial provider for our family.
I'm Indian. I grew up in village, 40 years old. I'm Christian.
I'm a 45-year-old mother of 6, and I'm a guidance team in a middle school.
I am a life artist, a socialist, and a city dweller.
I'm an 11th generation American, middle-aged single father of 2.
I'm a marketing professional. I was born in the Dominican Republic, and I now live with my family right outside of Boston.
I'm 13 years old, and I'm a student.
I'm a Buddhist, I'm single, and I live in Thailand.
This week, I saw a girl working in a brothel, and she couldn't have been older than my child.
I met a fisherman who was slave for 11 years.
I saw things no one should see young girls doing.
I heard the story of a fisherman who worked for 20 hours a day without pay for 11 years.
I helped a girl who was trafficked. I saw 2 young girls playing tag while they waited for clients at a brothel.
I heard a story of a fisherman who had to store the dead body of his best friend in a refrigerator.
I've heard about kids my age being forced into slavery.
I have rescued a girl 10 years old from the brothel.
Together, we can.
Together, we can ensure that this doesn't happen to any of our children.
Together, we can get her out.
Together, we can make sure children can be children.
Together we can realize there is no here, there is no there. What happens anywhere affects us everywhere.
We can do something.
We all have a part to play.
Let's fight together.
Together, we can make a free world.
Justice is in the hands of the ordinary.
It is my privilege this evening to be able to introduce someone that I just met tonight, but I have already talked to her previously. She is a connection of a company it's a nonprofit organization that's called I Empathize. There is a friend of mine who is a friend of hers, so now I consider her my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Christine, who is a survivor herself. Christine?
So thank you for being here tonight, all of you. You could have made other choices. Oh, this one is not going to work for me, because I cannot move myself around. So you could have made other choices, but you didn't. You chose to be here tonight, and I thank you for that. So before you came here tonight, quick question. This is going to be relatively quick, in my opinion. Whoever had any experience, not that you yourself were trafficked, but you heard about trafficking, you learned about trafficking, you knew anything about trafficking, raise your hand, yell out something. Okay, great. So a few people in here. Okay, great. This isn't going to be a trafficking 101 because that certainly can never fit into 20 minutes. But we're just going to watch this quick thing because my experience and what we're going to talk about right now is what happens in your neighborhood and what happens here in Los Angeles, what happens here in the United States. You heard a little bit about what happened in the exhibit is what happens. And the exhibit is amazing. If you didn't get to see it, you should definitely see it before you go home. About mostly what happens overseas. But I'm here to tell you tonight, the trafficking is happening in your neighborhood, wherever your neighborhood is. Because it is a huge problem in the United States. So we're going to watch this quick 40-second little video. I said, I'm talking about local and national issues here. And this is a worldwide issue. But, you know, I work at a school, and I asked some little girls, that little to grade 5, right, kids that I work with, just, hey, and of course some boys want to answer because then they felt left out. But it happens to boys too, so I figured I would just mention, and we have to go kind of quick. So some first graders told me when they grew up, they wanted to be a ballerina. And one little girl, I thought this was interesting because I'd actually never heard this answer before, a character I'd never heard of, but some character in, I can't even remember what the show is, but like basically a superhero, but a superhero that gets all the bad guys, right? And so I thought that was interesting. Mind you, she's 7. And I heard teacher, and some of my older kids in 4th and 5th grade talked about one kid talked about being a zookeeper, one little girl talked about being a zookeeper, one kid talked about being a librarian, and I'm getting to the point here. My point is, and one boy first grader talked about being a soldier, so I don't want to leave the boy out, because he really wanted to participate. And my point is that none of these kids talked about wanting to be a prostitute. And we don't really use that word, but none of these kids wanted to be trafficked or wanted to be a prostitute. Of course, none of us do. So, I don't really need these slides, but I like to stay on track. So the federal definition is basically 3 key words you need to remember, whether it's sex or labor, is force, fraud, and coercion. Force, fraud, and coercion. So if you're forced to do something, you're basically tricked into doing something, okay? Or it's fraud or coercion, okay? So maybe you get offered a job, and then they're like, oh, wait a second, you know, maybe you get offered to do a modeling job, and everything seems legit to you, but then everything changes suddenly. They take all your documents and they tell you they're going to kill your family if you don't do. This actually happened to a friend of mine, I'm not making it up. So these things actually are happening in our country and in our neighborhood. Okay? So human trafficking of sex and labor, mostly sex in our country, is the 2nd largest criminal industry. So it surpassed guns, and drugs is above it. But, so one gang member said, you know, I can have a car full of girls and get pulled over by the cops and nothing happens to me. But I can get pulled over with a car full of drugs, and if the police search me, I'm going to get thrown into jail. So what do you think I'm going to take up? So this is a huge problem, because it's hidden and unseen, and it goes on right before your eyes, and you don't even see what's going on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my own experience, because you can say, you don't really know what's going on, you don't know, you're not my age, all those things, we've all heard it before. And I could throw statistics at you, but that's not why you're here, and you get really bored. So I'm going to talk about my own experience for a few minutes, and then kind of wrap it up, because you want to get back to the worship. And by the way, I love worship, and I'm so glad that it's here tonight, and I'll get to that, because I'm going to this is a brief version, but worship was really the way that God captured my heart, so I really communicate to God that way, and so I'm so glad that we have a night of worship. You know, human trafficking is going on in your neighborhood. And when I was younger, so when I was younger, I grew up in a neighborhood that probably looked much like yours. I grew up in a regular looking house, and to the neighbors, I totally forgot to say that, but to the neighbors, I looked like a regular looking person and regular looking girl, and I went to school like you do, and nobody knew that anything was wrong. But from a very young age, unfortunately, my life was nothing like anybody thought it was. So this is going on more than you think it is. I've come across several other people. About 30% of the survivors I've run across has happened to in some way, shape, or form, not exactly like me. But from the time I was about 2 years old, my father was sexually abusing me. Sorry, my contact is going crazy. And so I never knew what it was like to grow up in a home where you had safe, caring parents. I didn't know what it was like to trust people because things only got worse for me. So by the time I was 4 or 5, my dad started selling me. And the first time my dad started selling me was not a church like this, but it was a church festival actually. And it was, I'm originally from Ohio, and there were no bars on my windows, and there were it was not like a brothel like you see over in the display, but I was a regular looking little girl. And I went to this festival with a promise of a treat and a carnival. And like any kid, I thought this time it would be different. But of course it wasn't. It wasn't different. And I actually didn't know what would happen because it had never happened before. And it was very scary because I was very young. You can think of a little girl. I had a picture of a little girl, but we didn't actually get to see it. A little kid doesn't have any way to escape. Oftentimes survivors are asked, why do you run? And you'll hear more of my story in a second, but I want you to think about that as you hear the story of a little girl who grew up in this world. So that and my friend Maddie, that girl had never been sold. That girl is a very strong-willed little girl, and I'm glad she's strong-willed because no one's ever going to make her do nothing she doesn't want to do. And so she was the story that went along with all the little girls' stories. But if you think of that little girl's 5 years old. And I've known her for a while, but she's a year older than I was the first time that I was sold. And I don't put that up to their traumatizing. That was not a happy day for her actually, but she's a very spunky little girl. So, this cycle of being at home and being brought home, and so I was never missing. There was never an Amber Alert put on me, although I'm not sure they existed at that time, but there would have never been an Amber Alert put on me. And my father continued to do these things to me, bringing me out at night to places or during the day, because that carnival scene was during the day. And what happened at that time is similar. What happened during my life was similar, I've been told, to a Latino brothel, in which the adult holds all the money. I never saw a dollar. My father sold to men. The men exchanged the money, and then they came in, and I was forced to provide the services for them. So, and whether it was a locked room in a church basement, and then it escalated to different places like hotel rooms or other places. And I won't go into graphic detail with you because that's just going to traumatize you. And, I don't mind talking about it, but so various places throughout the city in which I lived, to motel rooms, to back rooms of places, to any place you could really think of throughout my life. And so kind of going to speed forth because you kind of get the idea. And eventually, this author, like I mentioned about bars on the windows, she talks about how that is domestic captivity. And many of our friends and neighbors are living in that state of there were no bars on the windows. And when I went to school, I was labeled as a shy and quiet girl. because I was told not to talk, because just like any other trafficker, my father used emotional coercion and physical force on me. He beat me and all these things, but not in the way that you'd see a domestic violence person. They never walked in with a black eye, because it's just not the way it goes down. Because they don't want your teacher to walk up to you and be like, what? Why do you have a black eye? What's going on? Call child services. No, they don't want that to happen. So all of it was unseen. And I lived in an unseen way. And after I worked at night, came to school, I would kind of shut down, and I might have even fell asleep. And I was emotionally not my age. And so the teachers would run tests on me, and they could see that I was an intelligent person. But I wasn't scoring well, so they decided I was learning disabled. Which it took me a long time to realize I'm not. But they took a long, they told me I was, and I was told by my father if I told anyone, if I talked to anyone, or if I made friends, that he would kill me. And so I didn't. And oftentimes the kids at school would make fun of me, and as I got older into junior high and senior high, and you know how that is, the kids would be really mean, and they pick on the weakest person there, and I was the weakest person there, so I was not safe at home, and I was not safe at school, and I basically was not safe anywhere. And there were times where I just wanted it all to end, and I wished, and I would sit in this window at our school and just want someone to help me. And I just wanted it. I wanted it to end. It wasn't that I was suicidal. At one point I was, but I just wanted someone to come and save me. But it never happened, because all of this was happening right in front of everyone's eyes, right in their neighborhood, right down the street, in the house next to them, or in the motel that they were staying in. And it wasn't one of those nice ones, although that can happen. But it might have been in the room next to them, and they just never knew. And I just wanted someone to see me and hear me and know that I was there and help me. But one day, my friend invited me to a church. Because clearly, I'm in church. I mean, I wouldn't have to be a Christian to be here, but I am. And I thought, okay, whatever. And so I went to this church. And there was a lot of issues. And actually, it was a worship night, much like this, except for it wasn't focused on human trafficking. And I went back to that church because people were kind to me. And I knew that I needed someone to help me. And the people were kind. And so I didn't trust people, because I had one of those situations where you have to come up to the front for prayer and all that. And I thought, how many times have I been brought to a back room, and then it all, I end up being sold to people? And I was like, oh no, that is not going to happen. You're not bringing me to any back room, and I don't know who you are, and all that. So I didn't. But I took what was being said into my heart, and I went home, and I just, in my weak way, I said to God, if you're there, if you're real, help me. I don't know if you're real, because this is pretty horrible, kind of thing. And that's not a word-for-word situation. But the long of the story, it's much longer, could be much longer, was I ended up getting a scholarship to college, even though I didn't think I could learn, even though I thought I was hopeless, and even though I basically just wanted to die. Because, things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. And God just helped me. He reached down and helped me. And there's more to the story, of course, because I'm standing here today, and I'm standing here today with a master's degree and working to speak to you. And what I want you to know, go forward to a couple slides to where another one. Yeah, thanks. In a room this size, I know that some of you have experienced trauma. your lives aren't perfect. You know, I can't even see all of your faces, but I know some of you might be in foster care, and some of you might have experienced abuse yourself. And I hope that none of you are being trafficked right now, but I know that that could be happening. And so I want you to know that this is not what God wanted for your life. It's not what God wanted for my life, but especially on today, I don't know if you know, but of course you know today is Sam Hitchcock's Day, but I don't know if you know, I'm just going to make this very brief, but clearly I was trained as a pastor, because I keep saying that. But St. Patrick was actually trafficked, and he went back as a missionary to the people to help people who were trafficked himself, because of God's kindness, and because he simply couldn't look the other way anymore. He couldn't be silent. Not anymore, but he couldn't be silent. And so on this day of St. Patrick's Day, I was thinking about it during worship, and I thought, what an amazing thing that God set up on this day. He was labor trafficked. He wasn't sex trafficked, but labor trafficking doesn't get talked about enough. And so on this day, I want you to remember that no matter who you are, no matter what you've lived through, that you carry the image of God within you. And whether or not you or your friends ever come to, and hopefully you have, but whether or not you ever come to an understanding and acknowledgement, a relationship with Jesus, you still carry that image of God within you. And what I want you to know further is that we have a God of justice, a God who does not look the other way in these circumstances. God is not like, okay, you know, she just continues to be sold and her life is getting destroyed, and there's many girls that are dying because of this in our society, in our neighborhoods, in our cities. California is one of the highest places that I keep saying girls, but children, 18 and unders, is a CFAG population, are being trafficked. And so, because for many, many reasons, one is we're a very large state, but another reason is way too much complicated to get into at this moment. But I want you to know that God cares, and God has sent people to speak and preach. And what I want you to know is that you're here to do something about it. You're all sitting here. And one thing, so I'm just going to say one thing, that you can do is on your seats, you have a card from the Blue Campaign, okay, that has some indicators. And how many of you have at least one friend? Just one. Just one friend. Okay, I know y'all have more than one friend. So, I want you to, there's a saying out there, we're not brother's keeper, but that's a lie, because you are. So if your friend starts to display some of these signs, like an older boyfriend per se, because that's one of the big things, or some of these signs on this card, and you know, I have a list of them that I can send. You know, some of them, for example, with labor trafficking, you know, they're not even able to have their own documentation. So if your friend starts to display this, call someone, call the National Task Force, and they'll refer you to law enforcement in your area, who, by the way, is all getting trained. And I'm part of that. Okay? So they should not be arresting minors. Okay? It's a law in California. So you, just like there was an Uber driver in Northern California who spoke up, right? I don't care what your job is, you're a student. You have eyes and ears, and you can do something. And you can, of course, pray, but you can do something more. And so, just like me, who's no longer in that situation and is speaking to you today, there's a ton of hope here, right? And the reason that God has set us here is many times in the Bible, God creates an army to fight against those who are bringing evil into his land. And there's evil in our land. And we have to be aware of the other army. And so be educated. Research this issue. and know what you can do, know what the red flags are. And watch out for your friends. We're not just friends to like go get coffee. We're friends to watch out for each other. So you might be safe, but your friend, if somebody had been watching for me, then this would have been over a long time before it was. But nobody was there. You know, I often ask God, where was somebody when I was 5, when I was 7, when I was 9, when I was 12? And no one was there. So going back to the question, and I'll finish with this, why didn't you run? I'm here today, right? And so you can be the one. I just didn't run when I was 5 because I had no ability to at 5 years old. But you can be the one. Can you go forward a few slides to the trafficking hotline so they can see it? Next, the other one? So like the last, second to the last one. There you go. So if you're interested, I can get this information, although all I have to do is look up the National Trafficking Hotline. You can put it in your phone so you have it there. Okay? So that's kind of, there's a lot, it's really bad, but there's a lot of hope just like in my life. Okay? Now I'm fighting on God's team for this, and you all are here. So I just want you to know those couple of things. Okay? Thank you for having me.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we continue, I'm going to ask 4 of you. 4 of you to come up and read a prayer. Perhaps it's one of you who wrote this prayer of hope. Perhaps you haven't gone through the exhibit, and that's okay. You can still write a prayer. You just heard Christine's story, but she's not alone in this, and I am deeply touched and just motivated to respect and do something for each one of us, because we're all part of this. So I'm going to ask 4 of you to come and each read a prayer. And I'll call on Josue. Josue, can you come up, please? I'm going to ask some of you from this side here. Marcus. And I'm going to ask for 2 ladies. Is there anyone who wants to prepare? Okay. Ali, thank you. Ali. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give each one of them a prayer, and I'm going to ask you guys to listen intently to what someone your age wrote, and we'll start with
I pray for those who traffic. I pray that they realize what they're doing to innocent people. I pray they forget about the money. I pray that they can find it within themselves to change their minds, to set the slaves free. I pray for the traffickers, for with them lies the freedom.
May your value be more than your circumstance. May the sun show the true light in the midst of all the storms. God, let your people know. May they see the value and love you and have given you. They are not of this world. They are yours. Children of God, sons, daughters of the mighty. Amen.
For I am with you even until the ends of the earth. Be still and know that you are in the hands of the Almighty. Regardless of time and space, He loves you and continually watches over you. In this life or the next, we will all be free.
My hope and prayer is for everyone to be free from bondage and no longer suffer from inhumane things they are put to do. I love all of you and I hope there will be salvation and freedom for every one of you. My prayer is for you to stay strong and have faith in God.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Berlin Academy is now here with you guys.
day we go to work and we soon know so much more than they have. Race, and we start to hate again, calling the names again. Our peace, I hope they see it, 'cause I wanna see it. I hope we believe it. I wanna see the love it's all around you. It's all around you. I wanna know that love it's all around you. It's all around. Hope fades away again. There is pain we cannot medicate. Learn to feel, learn to begin. Open our eyes again to see our brother's pain. I hope they see it, 'cause I wanna see it. I hope we believe in it.
You just take a seat. Thank you so much for coming in. I'm Mary, by the way. I'm Mary tonight. Nice to meet you. Don't mind the giant microphone above your head.
I'm trying.
There are 3 photos in front of you. If you could just pick one, it doesn't really matter which one it is, and show that one to us.
All right.
Could you describe her to us?
She looks youthful. I feel like this is one of those situations where if I say he's 23, then he's actually going to be 16.
Hispanic, maybe not full of a part. Similar to me, actually.
Well, I mean, she's young, so probably has a lot of things to look forward to.
I would describe him as friendly.
She looks, happy. She doesn't look shy, but confident.
Anything she puts her mind to, she could achieve.
We actually have his story, if you could read that out loud to us.
Okay, Marcus. I grew up really close to my parents. Adriana. I grew up with my brother and sister.
Amy. I remember watching the Olympics on TV when I was 5 and being totally in awe of the sprinters.
I was the middle child and easily the quietest.
I felt like no one ever saw me or cared.
Dad was too drunk to keep a job, and he never even saw me unless I was in his way.
Mom worked 2 jobs to make sure we had food for every meal, so she was never here to know when he would hit us.
One day when I went to the mall, like I like to do to be out of the house, a man came up to me and told me I was beautiful and asked me on a date.
On our first date, he drove me around in his car and said we could eat whatever I wanted.
Every time we were together, he bought me something new.
Tom really cared about me, and Tom really made me feel special.
I was in love with him.
After only going out for 3 weeks, Tom offered me a way out of my home and asked me to move in with him.
So when he asked me to have sex with him, I did.
He would put his hand over my face until I couldn't breathe.
Tom had friends over pretty regularly, and I could tell that some of his friends were into me.
So I kept my door locked and hoped that no one would bother me.
After a few nights of crashing there, he said that I still owed him for letting me stay at his place.
He said he had a friend who wanted to spend an hour with me.
He told me I might have to do some stuff, but not to worry about it. It's not a big deal.
When I didn't want to, he slapped me and said no one ever cared about me like he did.
But I didn't know what else to do because I needed a place to stay.
His friends forced themselves on me and took turns while he watched.
One by one, they'd come down to the basement, telling me how pretty I am.
When they're on top of me, I just close my eyes and pretend I'm running.
I'm exhausted and I don't know what to do.
My name is Adriana, I'm 16 years old.
My name is Marcus, I'm 14 years old.
My name is Amy, I'm 12 years old.
I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
And I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
And I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
That was very different than what I thought.
So
especially because like being a girl and imagining like if that was me, like that's, I don't even know, I can't even imagine what that would be like.
She deserves to be a kid, just like what she is in this picture.
It being so close to home is something that makes me want to jump out of this chair.
I wouldn't think that Grand Rapids is a place where anything like this would ever happen.
Because you don't want it to happen to anybody, and you really don't want it to happen to people that live where you live.
Thank you for sharing her story with us. I'd like to show you something if you wouldn't mind taking her picture and following me to the gym.
I expected something certainly a lot smaller.
Bar graphs and numbers, and but these are actual people.
I don't know, in like my world, in my bubble or whatever, we don't talk about this. It's not something you think about.
You know, what we see is only on the surface.
I mean, looking at this, sex trafficking doesn't have any discrimination, that's for sure. Ages, genders, can affect anybody.
It hits you right in your heart, your gut, your stomach. It's like, wow. Now it's like I feel like I have this weight of responsibility to see how I can help.
Changes through greater awareness and making people realize that this does happen here and will continue to happen until we decide to make a stop.
It was almost Passover time. The Jewish people were making their way over to the temple. This was the time of the year when they celebrated when God had freed them from slavery in Egypt. And Jerusalem was crowded with everyone coming to the temple. It was packed. Luke tells us that Jesus is also making his way to the temple. Luke chapter 19, verses 45 to 46 says this: Going into the temple, Jesus began to throw out everyone who had set up shop, selling everything and anything. He said, "It's written in Scripture, my house is a house of prayer. You have turned it into a religious bazaar." Eugene Peterson translates the text this way. Because as Jesus is making his way over to the temple and he's looking at what is happening there at the temple, he's recognizing that in the outer courts of the temple, there is something going on that Jesus cannot handle. This is the revolutionary Jesus. This is Jesus the resistor who is looking at the temple and he cannot simply accept things the way that they are. This is a Jesus who sees with physical eyes, but also has spiritual eyes that have a vision of what God has given him. And so when Jesus sees what is happening there, as the Gentiles walk up to the temple, they can only be at this outer court of the temple. That's the only place they're allowed to be. And if they want to do any business at the temple, they cannot use the coins that have the face of the emperor on it. They must exchange it for temple currency. And while you might think that's okay, it is not okay to exchange money and to take a tax from these Gentiles to only profit the temple for their business. Jesus sees it. And Jesus is not going to accommodate to the way that things are because they can be changed. Civil rights leader Angela Davis puts it this way: I am no longer accepting the things that I cannot change. I am changing the things that I cannot accept. The Gospel of Luke emphasizes this idea that Jesus came for the sake of the poor. Those of us who dedicate our lives to studying the text recognize that Luke's use of the word poor is not simply people who do not have money or people who lack food and sustenance. When Luke is talking about the poor, Luke is explaining to us that these are people who are made poor by the rapacious economic systems of death that we have created amongst each other. The world really hasn't changed that much. The Bible is old, and if you have to read through the genealogies, it may actually be so boring you put it down. But listen, the world hasn't changed much. In Jesus' day and time, there was also problems that are human problems. Because you see, I kind of get it. I understand what it is to want money. I know what it is to want money on an individual basis, and I know what it is to want money at a church to do more ministry. And so I understand some of what's going on. And I suspect that you do as well. But this is not the system that Jesus came to just kind of settle into and to do ministry through the same kinds of vehicles that were already set up. Because you see, Jesus was also part of a community that was a people that had a covenant with God. And a covenant people want to be not only in right relationship with God, they have promised God to be in right relationship with God. But that is not the whole covenant. We have also pledged to be in right relationship with each other. And while that means that we ought to be loving people and accepting people, and there are stories in the Bible where we find this meek and mild Jesus, not every occasion and not every situation calls for the meek and mild Jesus. There are times when it is the revolutionary Jesus who shows up. And he doesn't just show up to the church, but he also goes out into the city, and he shows up in the city because, you see, Jesus lived in the tension between the temple and the politicians. Jesus came to serve no institution. Jesus came to serve the God who called Jesus to come and to rescue his people from believing that they were living in a culture of scarcity. You know why we live in these systems, these economic systems that exploit each other? Because we believe that there may not be enough to go around for all of us. But there is. And when Jesus sees this economic exploitation, the other Gospels, because it's told in all four Gospels, the other Gospels who give it a bit more detail tell us that Jesus began to turn over tables, that he began to throw things, that Jesus began to cleanse that temple. But Jesus doesn't just notice what's happening on the outside courts. Jesus also can see what every single Jewish person that was coming to that temple could see. The court of the Gentiles was on the outer periphery, and it separated those who were unacceptable because of their faith tradition from coming inside of the temple. But inside of the temple, there were all kinds of other divisions within the temple. People struggle
to see each other for who they are. And they struggled in the Bible the same way. And it was depicted in the way the temple was set up. There was the court of women that was an area outside of the temple building where only the women could be, and they were limited to being in that space in the temple. There was the chamber for the Nazarenes, and because they had been set aside and set apart for service of God, there was another section where the Nazarenes could be. There was a chamber where the lepers could be. They had to stay there, and they had to be separate because they were unclean, but they also had a section where they could be. There was a chamber where the Israelites were. And of course, they were separated because they were God's chosen people. And there was a chamber of priests who were separated by their calling to represent the people. Our sacred spaces look much the same today. We come into church and we can almost like divide people up. We can see who the outsiders are, who the women are, who the sick are, who the disabled are, who the elite are, and those who know. And Jesus came to break those walls. He was on his way to the temple, but it would be few days later that Jesus would give up his life. Give up his life to hopefully persuade us to give up looking at each other and evaluating our worth based on what our naked eyes see. Jesus came to tear down those walls so that as we saw the way that the world was divided and our physical eyes saw the differences amongst us, that we might look at the cross of Calvary and see that the death of Jesus was given out indiscriminately for all of us. Jesus came to tell us about a new economy that is life-giving, and that it doesn't depend on creating a system of indebtedness between one another in order to reach abundant life, because all we need is Jesus. We don't have to live these separated lives. We don't have to look at each other and think less of one another. So what do we do? What do we do? Because I don't know about you, but I struggle with my eyes. I struggle to see injustice. I struggle to see pain. I struggle to see what it is that God is calling me to do. And lately I've been wondering if I've just been wasting my time. I've been contemplating maybe I'm asking God the wrong question. Maybe it's not about what God is calling me to do. Maybe it's not about what he wants me to do. Maybe it's that what needs to be done has placed a calling on me. So what do we do? We're sitting in this place and you've just heard a survivor tell her own personal story of how she's been affected. I don't know if you were shocked, but I was. I had never heard Christine's story. I had no idea it started inside of a church. My mouth dropped when I found out that in Haiti it was a pastor. And it didn't shock anybody that it was a pastor. It shocked me. I was an outsider, but the rest of the people that I talked to said, yeah, that's common. It's the pastors. What? Because let me tell you, if we are committed to the Jesus who wouldn't accept the temple as it was, if we're committed to the Jesus who stretched his own faith community and stretched the politicians in his day and time, if you are following that Jesus, your commitment and your loyalty is to a God who has given us values that we must live our lives after. And we cannot shut our eyes. So I'm wondering if we can follow this Jesus. And what can we do? Because there's the tendency to look at it and think this is so overwhelming. The more I learn, going through the exhibit and reading stuff, I wonder, like, what can I do? I have 2 suggestions for us tonight. My first one is, let's get involved in our communities. What do I mean by get involved in your community? I Googled online to see what was happening lately in San Diego because I had learned that San Diego was actually one of the highest places where there's human trafficking. And I was surprised to learn that it is domestic. In other words, the highest rate is within the U.S. Because I thought, surely, since this is a town that's so close to the border, maybe it has something to do with the border or the seaport. It's domestic trafficking. The police department in San Diego this January put together an operation where they spent 2 days and they sent out ads online luring people to come who wanted services from a young girl that was trafficked. And when these persons came to the location where they were lured by these ads, the police then began arresting them, and over 2 days they arrested 38 people. We can walk into our police department and ask to have a meeting with someone and say, hey, listen, I saw this on the paper, I looked it up. What's going on here in this city? Have we ever done something like this? Can you talk to me a little bit about human trafficking and how you guys identify child abuse? How you guys is there something I can do or somewhere I can go to get involved and to do that kind of stuff? We can do that. I'm pretty sure that you can go back to your academies and to your youth groups and you can sit together and you can say, what in our community is going on and how can we connect to that so that our ministries, they're not just about staying in the temple, but they're about going out. Because part of Jesus' table turning and wall breaking was to show that this Jesus was God for us all. And the last thing I want to call us to do, this last suggestion, is that if you want to see a different world, if you want to see a world that is radically different, where we don't even have to have these kinds of evenings where we talk about something like human trafficking in a church, then we have to be different in our everyday relationships. We have to be able to show up in our own academies and to look at people as valued human beings and speak to them in ways that build them up. And I know that's hard, and I'm saying something that's a lot easier for me to say than to do, because I didn't grow up during a time period in high school when we had all this social media. And I try to stay away as much as I can because I just don't know how to deal with it. But you know what you can do on social media? For every hateful, objectifying thing that you read on somebody's post, how about you post something that is equal in the opposite direction, in a loving direction? Did you hear Christine tonight? She said that when she finally got freed at the very end, she came to a church where the people were kind. Kindness wins. Love wins. We must stay committed to the Jesus who purchased us. Yeah, we are sold. But we're not sold in the way the world sells people. The world can sell drugs and guns, and they add people to that list. But these people that they are selling, we have a prophetic word to give. We belong to God. We're not rescuing anyone. We're reminding them that they belong to God. So we tread upon the earth with power and with privilege and with complete assurance that we can walk up to people and be kind beyond all measure, beyond all comprehension, because those people who go unseen day after day can be seen in our eyes because God lives in us. You've been given a soul tag that's on your wrist. I want that to remind you that you are a child of God. We placed a red X on it with a permanent marker that unfortunately will be washed off. But in the days that it takes to wash it off, as you see it starting to fade day by day, I hope that you'll use it as a reminder to remind yourself, what action am I taking today? What am I reading? What am I going to do to change this situation? And I want to leave you with a poem that has sustained me through the last few years as I've been studying some of these dark topics of human trafficking and economic exploitation and labor, slavery, that has held me together. It's a poem by Winara Overstreet, and it goes like this. You say the little efforts that I make will do no good. They never will prevail to tip the hovering scale where justice hangs in balance. I don't think I ever thought they would, but I am prejudiced beyond debate in favor of my right to choose which side shall feel the stubborn ounces of my weight. I'm not so arrogant to believe that I can fix the world and change it, but I refuse to accept the things that need to be changed. And while in my lifetime I might not see anything, my ounces, when they are coupled with your ounces and coupled with the ounces of those who have gone before us and those who we will inspire that'll go after us, after the Jesus who has put his blood out for us, the world will change. Change will come. This is our time. This is our place. And I want to pray for you tonight. But I'm going to do it with our eyes open, because we cannot shut out the things we pray for by closing our eyes. And so God, tonight in this room, as we look into each other's eyes, as we recognize that we are sitting next to people who you love and who you died on the cross for, Father, tonight we dedicate ourselves to you. Help us to couple these insignificant small ounces on the side of what is right, on the side of what you have called us to do. And Lord, remind us that we are free because you have set us free. And we will not cease to remind each other that we're free and to fight for freedom until you come. So that when you come in the clouds of glory, Lord, you can look at us and recognize us and say, well done, good and faithful servant. Amen.
So we can change and we can start talking about freedom that many people need. Bless each one of the students. In Jesus' name, we want to ask all of this. Amen. Amen. God bless you guys. See you next time.